Being on Lavender Hill, I mean, I think for a start-off, we were extremely lucky that we didn't get to become victims of the riots ourselves, because next door certainly had their windows put through and a few doors down did as well. So by some grace, it actually missed us completely in terms of being victims. So far, we've certainly had a gentleman that was going over to see a relative of his to make sure him and his business were okay, and then found himself caught up in it, and he was chased and beaten by rioters. Victim support is we've been around for sort of 35 years, and what the staff at this particular office are telling me is they've had some historic victims that they've supported in the past of various crimes in the local area, that the riots have reignited some of their fears and anxieties about what they experienced at the time they were victims. So some are reporting that they've had flashbacks and are coming in for support again. They weren't necessarily directly involved in the riots, but their historic incidents and crime that they experienced has reignited some of those fears and anxieties that they had then.
Duncan Mundell owned the Party Superstore in Clapham Junction, supplying over 16,000 party products to the people of London and Surrey. A business he has built up since 1994, there is now nothing left to show for it following the extensive damage caused by the riots.
You need to be very careful here because this is fairly dangerous. I suggest you try walking over here. Well, on the day, we locked up the shop at 5 o'clock because the police told us that there was going to be, things kicking off. We cleared the tills and all went home. And we sat at home watching the news. And I have some friends and staff in the area who were around, and they were keeping me updated during the evening by phone, telling me what was going on. Later in the evening, we got a report that the shop had been broken into. I got an alarm call from the alarm company. Then we heard that the rioters were running out of the shop with masks, and everyone was running around the junction in masks. And then later that night, I got a horrible phone call from one of my friends who was almost in tears, in absolute panic, saying, "The shop's on fire, the shop's on fire. Oh my God, Duncan, get down here, your whole shop's burning, I can't believe it." The fire, as you can see, destroyed the roof. We've actually got possessions from the flats above where they've fallen through the ceiling. The bathroom upstairs is now downstairs. The whole of the ground floor is destroyed, the flats are all destroyed. The basement didn't completely get destroyed, and we are actually salvaging some costumes from the basement, but most of it that hasn't actually been burned has been damaged by fire and smoke. Well, I'm very upset about this on a personal level as well, because I just reached a stage in my life where I had withdrawn partially from running the business, and my managers and staff were looking after it because and I was spending about 50% of my time running the charity. I set up a charity 3 years ago called Street Kids Rescue, and it started when I was with my wife and we were in Southeast Asia, and we met some street kids, and these children were so determined to improve their lives and study, even although they were living rough, had no food, nowhere to sleep, no future, but all they could talk about when we spoke to them was wanting to go to school. And I was so impressed with them that I went back 4 weeks later and set up a school for the street kids and started to get some of these children off the street. We set up an apprentice program. We paid their wages so they could learn a trade. And while I was there, I then discovered how much other need there was, and there was areas where there were no schools at all, so I started building some schools. I then found there was many children who had no medical care at all, so we opened some clinics. I then found disabled children who needed major operations, but there was no funding at all in the country for those kids and their parents couldn't afford it. So we've now done over 50 major operations on children with deformed limbs, children with tumours. So we've been able to make a huge difference to thousands of lives for not a huge amount of money. And one aspect that really concerns me is that a lot of the money going into the charity comes from me, and my income comes from this business. So it's hit the income for the charity and my time that I was spending running it. And that's very sad that these rioters who claim to be deprived would have set fire to this place, and they're actually causing a change in the lives of those children who are truly deprived.